have a meeting where we do that. And it's not that it's weird, it's just that I'm just like, why are we talking about this topic? Like, we all came here. Like,
You're a doer. You're a doer.
Like, we all came here and it's just like,
No, I know. I'm in the midmaker, but I don't like it. All the way all over the place. But just in the long term, we're also stressed.
yeah. Well, that's why, I mean, for me, it's like making definitive action that, like, relieves that stress.
Yeah, no, I
But I mean, I'm also a soul stirred, so.
Well, I
also have no emotions or heart, so. I don't care about feelings. So.
Shut up.
Okay, well, do you want to?
Okay, so are we going to stand at the podium there?
Do you want to? Do you want me to?
Well, my camera works really well, focused right there. That works.
I feel like we should have invited. We should just made this open. I really think we're trying to invite too many people. Like there's not obviously too many people here.
I know, but you don't know.
Okay, so I think we're live. I don't know.
Moving forward. Should we get started? It's already
Yeah. So
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
It's a YouTube channel. Okay. And if you can't find it, we share. Yeah. Oh, good. You're right. Hi, Tish. Nice to meet you. Oh, hi, Tish. And there were there.
yeah, so I think it's a problem.
You found it? Yeah.
It's not this reception.
You want to just have a seat over here?
Yeah, wherever.
Okay.
We're not gonna have you guys like speak or anything today since we didn't really make a plan.
No worries.
So-
we're just glad to hear. We're just glad to hear.
Okay, cool, yeah.
Yeah, these are kind of frantic, I know.
Because as we break into groups, I think having you guys say what direction that you're kind of thinking about taking in
Okay.
those groups would be really helpful.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, now I can only stay to 12:30. Is that okay?
Yeah, totally.
Is that totally
Whatever,
cool?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it seems kind of like people are kind of wrapping up to 12:30 or 1 anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to go till 3 at all.
Okay, awesome. All right. Yeah, thank you for putting this together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
and I'm sorry about the IMs back and forth yesterday.
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we want to have a meet and greet, so I think that'd be really fun.
Say again.
If you want to have a meet and greet, I think that'd be really fun, but we can talk about that later.
Oh yeah, and then we can talk about the goals and stuff we want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well,
All right.
thanks for coming, man.
No problem. Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming. We're going to go ahead and get started now. I know it's about 10:25, so I think people that are coming have arrived. So welcome. I'm Cheetah. This is Jessica. Thanks so much. We're the crazy people that said, let's start marching Denver. So here we are. The march was an incredible success. I'm still somewhat in shock and awe of just the phenomenal turnout we had and the huge global, worldwide cultural, historical impact that we had. And so proud that Denver had such a great turnout. So as all of you are here, right, like, what do we do next? Where do we go from here? What do we do? There is no shortage of ideas. There's no shortage of work to be done. And we really are here just to say, you know, we want to help facilitate connecting people with organizations while doing some of our own things on the side. We have an idea of sort of a framework or a structure we'd like to suggest to people that want to get involved. And then, you know, I'm going to talk about just sort of the ideas that I have moving forward and some of the things that I would like to see come out of this. And then Jessica will talk, and then we have Morgan Carroll here. She's, what? Helen also. Where's Helen? Helen will also be talking. So we'll have some different things going on, conversations, and we hope to kind of bust out into groups depending on what your area of interest is, so we can just start networking and collaborating today, right, and seeing how we want to move forward. Anything to add?
Nope, that's it.
All right, cool. All right, so I don't want to be a politician. You know, a lot of people say, oh, Cheetah for office, oh, Jessica for office, and we're just like, oh, no, you know, I'm really, really dedicated to my students and my classroom, and working for Denver Public Schools is really where I want to be focusing a lot of my energy. But at the same time, I recognize that, you know, we started something huge, and I don't like to not finish what I started. So I'm definitely committed to this movement and seeing it through to the best of my ability and my time. So right now, what I think is happening is there's a lot of people that, you know, most people are like legislative outreach, legislative change, changing the laws, you know, getting the whole system to look a little bit different. And that's, you know, a huge thing. I mean, that's pretty much why we all are here and why we marched and whatnot. The flip side of that, where I sort of bring my perspective is we have to be able to connect as a community, as people, as friends, as neighbors. And so that's really where I would like to focus personally my energy, is on some community outreach and impacting social change in ways that don't necessarily have direct correlations with politics, but that, you know, there's always going to be that crossover. We were discussing this morning, talking about how there has to be this legislative change, but really that legislative change, I think, will only be successful if we as neighbors and community members come together in a true meaningful way, instead of just, you know, on social media or, you know, saying that we are connected, but if we're not really face-to-face in person, I'm not sure how deep that connection and genuine connection will really be. So some of the ideas that I put forward in talking with Jessica and some of our other co-organizers, I like the way that Jessica had kind of lined out these general strategies, and we have some short-term and long-term goals and mid to long-term goals. So some of the things I'd like to see for general community strategies within immediate action, right, things we can do right away, is connecting volunteers with already established nonprofits, groups, and entities that are already doing the hard work, right? We are not seeking to do anything that people have already been doing for 20, 30 years, right? Some of these groups that are nonprofits have been doing the hard work for a long, long time. They're well established. Right now, I'm looking at this, you know, tremendous group of people we have as almost like an army, right? We have this army of volunteers and people, and I'd love to be able to just easily connect these groups and these entities with the people that want to help. And so to this end, we're really trying to sort of form a database, if you will, of volunteers and this army of people that we have that can go out and really, you know, it's a matter of like, if you have a group and organization and you want people to come and march, you call March on Colorado. We've got 1,500 women for you right then and there, right? That's sort of how I'm envisioning it, is just rally the troops, go, you know, finding those causes that you really care about and being on call to march, to storm the offices, to write letters, to make phone calls, whatever it takes within that moment. Those are things we can do immediately. And then also, I like to host things, in case you didn't notice, right? So I really like to bring people together in person, face-to-face. And to this end, we'd love to have community networking meetings, potlucks, right? I think it's really important that we sit down and share food together. It's a great way to understand one another. It's a great way to form bonds. And again, this legislative change won't mean diddly if we're not forming those bonds within our neighborhoods and in our communities. So, long term, we need to be empowering women and young girls, not just, in science and technology, right? I'm totally about that. I teach math. I am all about girls being strong and powerful in the sciences, but I also think we need to make sure we're empowering girls to be strong mothers, to feel okay, to be who they are and not feel shamed in any way, shape, or form, and really forming these coalitions of women where we're supporting one another. We're not trying to tear each other down, because I think most women in here can attest to, you have your core group of people, right? You have your girlfriends, but there's always someone trying to tear you down, right? So we really want to kind of stop that. We want to build girls' self-esteem. I'm standing up here with huge self-esteem issues, right? Jessica and I talk a lot about how, we were laughing and like, oh, it's so typical. We outdid ourselves with the numbers in the March, but we thought, oh, 50,000. Well, we might get 50,000. Damn it, it's time we stop underestimating our power. And so that's what we really want to teach girls. Like, this is not, we're strong, right? Thank you. So, and we have girls that are in high-risk, low-support situations. The students that I work with, I have several students that they're the big sister, and they take care of their little brothers and sisters, right? And then consequently, their scholastics and their academics suffer. It's not because they don't have potential, it's not because they don't have the smarts, it's because they don't have the time. They're too busy supporting and helping take care of their family members to really be able to take care of themselves. So those are the girls that I really want to reach out to, are the ones that are, they're already playing little mini mothers, and we need to lift them up and support them. Having these situations and this core group of people, that I think we have such a great resource to be able to reach out to a lot of girls. Again, girls are the women that become our mothers, right? And so the women that raise the boys, the boys that aren't afraid of strong women. It's part of the mission for me. The other thing I would love to see, right, is a safe space, and one of our volunteers had sort of mentioned this at one of our meetings, of having a place where immigrants can come and ask questions and get help and get resources and feel safe and not feel scared that, they're going to be judged or maybe even deported, or, any number of those fears that come with being an immigrant in this country, especially now. Providing those safe spaces and resources for them. Love to see some coalition behind that. And then the mid to long-term goals, establishing scholarships. I think the root solution for nearly every problem we have in society is education. And if we can continue to support people in education in all realms, I think the better. In terms of scholarships, I would love to see those scholarships going to people who have shown a dedication to social justice and human rights causes, right? Because we need to continue to build up people that are strong and not afraid to stand up for others. So scholarships, I think, would be huge. We raised a lot of money for the march, and so I'm very confident that, there's the money out there, there's the love and the will of people to share, and I think it's totally realistic to think that we could easily do 10 scholarships a year for people to help them get out there. I don't see any problem with that. I don't know how to do that, though, so that's why you guys are here. And then, obviously the very long-term goal is that we create a society and a social structure in which people are no longer treated with less dignity because of their gender, their religion, their ethnicity, or any other of those distinguishing factors, right? That's the ultimate goal, is that we truly do create equity and equality within our society. I think that's probably not going to happen necessarily in my lifetime, but I'd like to think that we start this bridge, right? That we're the bridge from one generation to the next, and that by the time my grandkids are out and about, that they'll be like, you used to march for human rights? Really? Oh, how interesting. I mean, I would love that, right? That it would be a foreign concept to them. Right now, my daughter is 16, and my son is 19, and I'll tell you, the teenagers are already the way we need them to be. They are already loving and accepting and non-judgmental. We need to be that way. So that's my vision, and so Jessica's going to talk a little bit about how we're kind of hoping to see some of these groups form, right? we're really not up here telling you what you should do. We're telling you and asking you to follow your heart and your passion and put your energy where you think it's going to be best served in your community. So. Is there any questions before Jessica gets started? Sorry, Jessica.
Can I just make a quick comment about the scholarship idea?
Yeah.
I just ended a term on the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame Board, and we partnered with the Colorado Women's Education Foundation, CWEF, and they already have a structure in place to choose non-traditional women for scholarships. People who, you know, in one case it was a hairdresser who, you know, was in an accident and needed to do something different. But you're talking about high school kids, but you might be able to partner with them.
Right,
because
right.
They already have a structure in place.
And that's, you know, that's a great point is, again, we really do want and need to partner with the groups and organizations that are already doing this. Jessica and I are not professional organizers. We're not politicians. We're just regular women that felt like we really needed to do something right. And now we've sort of catapulted ourselves into this very public sphere. Okay, help. Yeah.
Can you let us know, and maybe I'm just the one that doesn't know, who all is here and what your objective for today is?
Sure. So Jessica and I were the organizers of the Women's March. You know, honestly, I don't know who all is here. I know Morgan Carroll is here, and we have some women that marched in DC are here. But you know, if anyone certainly wants to stand up and kind of talk about why they're here, I'm totally okay with that.
I would say let's hold on that until we break into breakout groups, because it's really great that everybody is here, but I think that could take a very long time, and as beneficial as it would be, I think it'd be done in smaller.
I was just more curious about the big
Global.
objective of
Cool.
today.
Yeah.
Right, so the big objective for today is really trying to figure out and establish some sort of structure of how we're going to move forward. You know, I've been saying this whole time, like, we have a vision, it's really blurry. You know.
So I think the whole goal of today's too is that we realize that just because we have the platform right now, it doesn't in any way authorize us to choose the shape of this. So this very first meeting is to say, here's some ideas, here's a couple of framework suggestions, and then let's kind of see how we want to move forward. The biggest point is that, like, we want this to be a hub of organization, communication, and information, and use different factions of energy to push different points of policy. So that was the end of that
Yeah,
sentence.
any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. I was out of town and had dog stuff this morning. But so I just gonna throw out an idea because I have a couple ideas that might be useful if we are gonna break out. Like if people want to suggest, not necessarily like everyone gets up and like says what they want to do, but like if there are ideas that people are like, drawn to.
No, I would like to open up the floor right at some point for people to come up and talk about sharing ideas, and maybe we could do that right before we break out.
We could do that. So the general idea is that we do these real quick presentations. We're going to talk about, Helen Trebe is going to talk about a point of activism with, you know, continuing to go to rally marches, and Morgan Carroll is going to talk about how to be active by going to town hall meetings and bill pass, how do you say that, legislative meetings. And then we were going to do breakout sessions, and then for like an hour, so everybody can really cover ideas, and then have people come up here and kind of give a summary, so then we can kind of all just collect. So I think that, you know, maybe we should save questions for now, and maybe we should save introductions for now, and just like plow through this so we can get some real work done.
Would it be valuable to have a sign-in sheet to go around and contact?
Oh, you have your little note cards. Which if you guys, so your note cards are for questions, ideas, suggestions. And we would like those to be returned to us with your questions, ideas, and suggestions. But if you want to keep your own notes, you obviously are welcome to.
Yeah, and again, you know, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants on this. You know, we need an agenda. We need to figure this out, and it's a lot, right? And so we really are just sort of running with this. We've barely recovered from last Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm still just super tired and been pulled in a lot of different directions with a lot coming at us. So we do appreciate like your patience and your understanding that we're just trying to figure this out too, right? We're so appreciative of everyone that has come here today. If you're here today, you received a private invitation, right? You were invited because you have proven through whether your posts or your involvement with the march that you're dedicated to furthering this cause. And so we do appreciate that you're all here, and we could not do any of this without you. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, and she can kind of talk about the framework of how we envision maybe groups forming from here on out really throughout the state.
So I know that, thank you. So I know that a lot of people have been looking at the indivisible document, and it's been really popular in the public opinion lately. So we kind of just came up with this loose structure, or again, framework of kind of something we can throw over groups, because I think that group organization is the most effective way to kind of channel stuff up. And again, this is like, we understand that we are totally new to this, and there have been organizations doing this for a really long time, and so those are the best resources we have and the strongest backbone here. So basically the idea is we're going to take groups that already exist, and I won't read this to you verbatim because I hate when people read stuff at me. But so, like she did mention with the community strategies, the strategies that we kind of came up with was immediate action. This is, I got to give credit to Maureen Carroll, her phrase of blocking from harm, which I think is a really good, instead of saying on the defense, which is what we're doing, but blocking from harm is a really good spin on that. And that, for me, I think, and this is, again, is open to ideas, living document, but I think is something we really need to focus on, obviously continually, but only focus on for the next 3 months. So we can implement these other strategies of like the mid to the long term, over the course of the coming months and years. But until we really get solidified as an organization and communication, let's just keep it on blocking from harm, because it's just coming down so fast. So we'll skip the general roles because I should have reorganized this to be, so basically if there's all these different groups and they want to focus on different things, the idea is that we would have standardized roles in each group, so then this would kind of create subgroups that would communicate mostly on an online platform, but kind of keep us all in the same communication circle. So one person, I said, describe her the archivist. I'm not calling anybody a secretary. That one's out. I'm gonna find different words for that one. And then the advisor. So those are the people that, and the watcher. So those are the 3 people that I think will really be in charge. And the watcher, Helen, is going to talk about this concept a little bit later, and we do have a page that talks about that. But it's going to be creating a calendar of saying, like, when is Corey Gardner in his office? When do we go down there? What bills are being discussed? Which room do we go to? If we don't go to a room, do we just stand in front of the Capitol with signs? Like, we can have a very strong physical presence. And if we have each scribe and advisor and watcher, one in each group, then we have that information getting out to people without them having to focus on it all the time and pay attention to it. It's based around the idea that everybody is really, really, really busy. So as much as we can delegate tasks and information seeking, the better. And then the more midterm roles are, I think mentor is a really important one, because again, give credit to Maureen Carroll. Outreach is really important. Like, we're going to have a lot of people that are just disgusted with Trump that voted for him. And it's going to be really easy to say, I told you so. But we need to try and not do that. So we need to kind of assign a mentor from each group that is basically the most patient, saint-like person that you know, to calmly explain things like the difference between Black Lives Matter and All Lives Matter, and like the Muslim religion, and as much as you can, refugees versus immigration. And we just, we need to understand that people just don't inherently get this, and that when they seek to be informed, we have to help them. So yeah, I can just leave you to read over the rest of the roles on your own, but I think in general, just as you move into breakout groups, real quick, resources on the other page. So these resources would be more specific to different roles. Like the reader is a more long-term role, and that's somebody that would read about Jim Crow. There's a study guide for the new Jim Crow, which I think is great. Anyways, and then, so the watchers, the people for blocking from harm, the weekly actions, there's so many different weekly actions out there, and so we will create a calendar, but also that's the other role of the advisors and the watchers, is to kind of consolidate these weekly action calendars. I mean, there's the Women's March, 10 things in 10 days, there's Wall of Us, there's something called the Oath, there's Daily Action, which is a text service. So there's lots of stuff out there, and so the more that we can have all of that consolidated and be acting on it every day, the better. So again, that's the importance of having roles within these groups. And then I will leave it now to Helen to talk about the concept of the watchers, but I think this is a really good idea of having just like Judy was saying, like we basically have an army of people ready to go. Like if you have the day off, or if you have a long lunch break, or if you have a free Saturday, and it just so happens that the watchers have found out that Cory Gardner will be in his office that day, or a major healthcare bill is about to pass, then you can say, okay, cool, I'm a watcher, I'm gonna go down there and I'm gonna stand there until they listen to us. So Helen, do you wanna come talk about the
What's
watchers?
your last name as you speak?
Oh.
Your last name is?
Jessica Rogers.
Thank you.
Helen.
And weren't we all just like totally emotionally thrilled last weekend? And there's so many people who have called up and want to keep doing something. Just briefly about myself, I am an attorney in Denver. I've been an attorney here for 38 years. But my practice for the last 20 years has been all mediation and arbitration, all in family law. But I've been very active in the Democratic Party, of being a PCP, precinct committee person, and going to the very activities there. In 1970, I marched and was arrested at the Federal Center in Denver, trying to block it because we had just found out about the clandestine bombing of Cambodia that Nixon did. And Jane Fonda was there, and then on her trip across the country to go to these things, and she snuck out before. But I went to jail with my friends, 5 of us, because we did our own trial, and afterward they had to find us guilty of trespassing. And afterwards, the jury's people came up and said, you know, you were right, we agree with you, but you know, this was the law, and we said, we understand. So that was civil disobedience. So as one of the signs in the march said, I can't believe I'm still walking for this shit. I mean, after this, I mean, it was a fabulous sign. Yes, they didn't say so. So the reason why I brought up this idea about, it doesn't have to be a watcher, but on TV, all you heard afterwards was, well, that was fabulous, that was great, now what are they going to do? You know, no one said anything, it's going to fall apart, you know, that kind of thing. So Morgan's going to talk about this menu of things, and I totally agree with it. I joined Laura's indivisibility. But I think physical presence is very important in one way. So my thought was, following what the mothers and grandmothers in the late 1970s started in Argentina, when their sons, their daughters, mostly sons and fathers, disappeared and were taken and tortured, and no one at times knew what happened because they threw them out of airplanes over the ocean. And one of these women who started this march, so what they did is they marched, and I think like President Obama made some reference to it really, because I think they still have a march. They're Madres de Plaza de Mayo. They would go there, and I'm not sure, it might have been on a Sunday, not exactly sure how much, and they wore white scarves, and they stood there in silence. And they did it for a couple years, and one of the women who started this march was also taken from her home in the middle of the night and taken to a torture center and thrown out of an airplane. That's how they wanted to keep this military dictatorship. In 2011, in Italy, Berlusconi, the prime minister, who's also very, very wealthy, and he owns all the media, so you didn't hear a lot about this. These women in Italy marched against him because he is a sexual predator, and they finally indicted him, and he's serving, because he's over whatever, 80, he's serving house arrest or something. But the women in Italy were furious about this, and they marched all over their country. and did it. And one of their signs was, Italy is not a brothel. So these things, not just with women, but with everybody, and this is why, as just a small part of this, I feel that physical presence is extremely important. In what I wrote, which was just an idea, was we will pick a day, and it would be nice to do it under the march, in the sense that we don't have a million different things we're looking at. And I envisioned the sign, first of all, I envisioned that poem is exactly what we were talking about. It's, Liberty Watchers, everybody's ideas, but it's mainly, the March on Denver continues, ... You walked with us, you stand with us. So potentially we're thinking every Wednesday, and of course this is again every Wednesday from 12 to 1, you come down. You don't have to sign up. That's the thing that was so fabulous about the march. It was simple. You didn't have to sign up. I was a marshal, so I volunteered and went to something. But it was simple. You show up and that. So my thought was maybe there are some signs, because what I have envisioned is, we marched, we are standing, we are watching, we are resisting, and we vote. Something similar to that with the Statue of Liberty. And personally, I think wearing white or a white scarf, which is what the Madres did, or just a white shawl, just something like that, silently, standing there, and you come, and it happens every Wednesday or time. For a while I was thinking Saturday, but when I talked to Jessica, she felt it might be better to do Wednesdays. I can take off work then and run. And you stand on Broadway across the street from the Capitol, so you are visible. You don't need a parade permit, and you just stand there with your sign or without a sign, but you do want people to know what you are and what you are doing. And if there are a lot of people, it may be the whole block. If there's 3 people or 2 people, it doesn't matter. So that's the concept, and it's just one of many things, but it's visible. And if this did happen a lot like the marches did, you know we're there. And basically that's the concept, and my name and email and all of that is on there, still in a formative stage.
Love it.
Pardon me?
Where is your?
Well, if you look on, thank you for putting this on, the proposal for continuing activism, and at the bottom, my name, my email, and my phone number. So we're still working on this, and anybody's input is appreciated.
Protest using their bodies subversively, wearing all black in public spaces on a weekly basis. This was used in Israel and Palestine during the Second Intifada. This was in Serbia and former Yugoslavia during the Balkan Wars. And it's something that
Cory Gardner's office, which is right downtown on 17th Street. I mean, I don't mean that that has to be the capital, especially in other cities if they wanted to do it where they don't have a legislature. It's just anything like that. So, yes.
Move On is already having meetings outside of Cory Gardner's office on
Right, I was,
Tuesdays.
yeah,
So,
yeah, I know,
it
I've
could
heard
also
of it.
be, I mean, I don't know what's right, but to join those two ideas together.
Right, yeah.
Yeah,
And I think it's just to have like a group of women, and I mean, I do think having a consistent color would be great, but yeah, just add
Right.
more bodies.
To connect with Move On and say, we're white.
yeah. Yeah, I know they were there at noon. We were there with Indivisible that morning, the Indivisible group that morning. So that's a very good idea. Yeah, I think everybody's.
I have one more thing, I mean, I would just really encourage black instead of white.
Well, so let's do another, because Morgan's gonna do another point of
Yeah.
activism, and we can talk about, I mean,
All
I
that.
appreciate that, but we're gonna wait on clothing color to hear
Yeah.
about, blocking
Thank you.
healthcare.
Okay, please help me thank the organizers of the Women's March. And Helen for your participation on this too. I don't know about you, but as I felt ill on Friday, on the day of the inauguration, and I felt as proud and hopeful as I felt awful when we were actually all part of this march. So I think the insight here is so important about what we really do for next steps. And I think what I want to talk about a little bit, I'm Morgan Carroll. I'm term limited. I spent 12 years in the state legislature. I was an activist that actually catapulted me into a run for office, and now that I'm term limited, I'm back to my role as activist. And before Trump was ever elected, before this last election ever happened, one of my obsessions and passions was really pulling back the curtain to help regular people know how to get involved in the process, to claim and take the power that is theirs by right. And before we ever had a Trump, so 12 years has been focused on how to get people to engage, to make positive and forward change at every level for what's happening, things that bluntly we often don't teach in school. And so when I got elected, I made a promise to myself to notice all of the real world inside observations about how it worked and the disconnect between that and the general public, so that I could make a commitment to make it as easy and accessible as possible for everyday people to know how to participate in the process. Anybody can make and change law. What used to be my aggravation point was honestly taking on lobbyists, special interests. Before there was a Trump, there was a dysfunctional Congress that was not taking up the needs of the American people. They had plenty of bad ideas before this particular president came around. But whether carried out at the local level, the state level, or the federal level, what I saw in my experience was when we would do 600 to 800 or so bills every year, we would have citizens participate in maybe 20. And the majority of the time, Colorado has an extremely unique feature in that we have a constitutional right for anybody to testify for or against a bill. Every bill must get introduced and scheduled for a public hearing. That is not true in DC, that is not true in a lot of states. So what you saw, for example, with the sit-in, when it was universal background checks on gun issues, DC, like many other states, if the leadership of the chair doesn't like you, they can just sort of pocket veto your bill. It never comes to see the day of light. Well, here we are in Colorado, where everybody gets 5 bills, majority and minority party. Every bill gets a public hearing. Anyone can testify. And if life is busy on a day that something is happening, you can submit written testimony if you cannot get there in person. And if you don't live in the Denver metro area, we now have rural remote testimony. So quick tip on testimony, then I'm gonna flip to preventing harm. Some of the basic tips about being involved are still true, but I had to rethink the best advice I could give to people on how to impact the system where right now we've got one-party control. It's, it's a Trump presidency, it's Ryan in the House, it's McConnell in the Senate, and crassly, we've got a stolen Supreme Court on an appointment that was never allowed to be made under President Obama. That changes the dynamic. But at your local level here, use that right to testify. What I saw in my experience is with 1,100 paid registered lobbyists and most regular people unable to afford a lobbyist on their behalf, when people engaged, people win. And when people didn't engage, basically, I would say that the majority of the lobby corps, special interests, got their way. And the quick example I'll give on that is when I passed lobbying reform in Colorado, it had serious opposition on the inside. So right now in Colorado, you can see every registered lobbyist, who they work for, how much they're getting paid, every bill that is introduced. You can click on the bill and see who is being paid how much money to lobby for or against every piece of legislation. That is not the case at the federal level. That information is powerful. So tip one, at the local level, is your Secretary of State's office bookmark it. Why? Campaign finance disclosures are there. You want to see who's spending what to get who elected in office. Unlike the federal level, at the local level, 527s, which used to be the dark money on campaigns, all money in and all money out. I passed that bill back in 2007. After Citizens United came through, Colorado's one of the only states that passed disclosures on it. Bookmark the Secretary of State's website if you're interested in following lobbying activity or campaign finance activity. So some quick bookmarks of things going on at the local level. The Colorado General Assembly is a website I would say bookmark it. Right now, your state legislature is in session. One of the tools we have available to us to block harm, local and state governments have always been important. They are even more important now than they have ever been before. So on your Colorado General Assembly website, it's the contact information of all 100 state legislators. You can look at the calendar for every bill that is in committee or up for vote in the House or in the Senate. You can now search by topic. You can double click on the bill, read the legislation for yourself. There is what's called a fiscal note prepared for every bill, so you can see what kind of financial impact is with every bill. Colorado has a single subject requirement, so unlike the federal, there's a limit to how much garbage can go in one piece of legislation. And one of the places where I'd like to not only have women as watchers showing our physical presence, but please, please, do consider using your right to not only be seen, but be heard. As someone who sat through these hearings with my colleagues who write in here, who's also served in the House, I have seen people change their mind. It is your life and your story. Tip on testifying. Prepare 3 minutes. You show up. You don't need an invitation. You do not need permission. There's a sign-in sheet. Your name, your address, whether you're for or against a bill. Anybody can testify. It can seem intimidating, don't let it. This is my name, I'm Morgan Carroll. I'm here to oppose this bill, which I'll tell you about. We actually, on February 9th at the state capitol, there are 3 bills that impact women. Patrick Neville is running the Women's Health Protection Act, the Abortion Pill Reversal Information Act, and the Protect Human Life at Conception Act are all happening on Thursday, February 9th at 1:30 in Capitol Committee Room 271 in the Health and Information Environment Committee. There's 3 bills that are all terrible for women. If you can be there, please do. Please do show up, and if anyone wants these bill numbers, if you go to the website, you can click on them so you can read for yourself what they do. Example, House Bill 1085, House Bill 1086, House Bill 1108. And if you're not comfortable testifying yet, show up and watch. And you can observe how this process works by listening online till you get comfortable with kind of the flow of how a committee goes. You can just sit in the room and watch and see at what point you feel comfortable. But at some point, I hope you will feel comfortable, you will sign up, and you will testify. So 3 minutes is my name. I support or oppose this bill. Here's why. A personal story.
Can you repeat the date and time?
Thursday, February 9th, 1:30 p.m., State Capitol, Committee Room 271. And that is on the calendar. Yes, Sue?
Thank you, Morgan. I'm Sue Wright, and just recently a state legislator, and I was chair of the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. And it really is important for real people to be there with real stories. And I would say take some kind of public transportation down there. Parking is atrocious. It's not a real friendly place. You go in the north entrance, you have to go through security, don't bring any guns or other weapons. But you can sign in, and 271 is a large room, and so they're expecting a crowd. So it's good to have our folks there ready to testify and or just to show solidarity. They don't allow crowd response. It's somewhat of a formal hearing, but the other thing I'd recommend is go online and look who's on that committee and where they represent, and if one of them is your representative, especially, call them ahead of time. Let them know how you feel about the bills, and let them know that you're planning to come, or if you're not planning to come, let them know that too. But get to know that representative or that state senator, because it's really important for all the email and all the communication that the legislators get. If they see your name 2 or 3 times and start remembering who you are, they might give you a phone call to ask you to come to a stakeholder meeting when you're writing a bill. So you can really have a lot of influence. It takes a little effort, but I would say that all of our representatives are pretty open, and you may have a Republican one.
I know,
and it's important to talk to them too.
I see a couple hands that are up. Let me actually direct people to the handout I'm going off of. I have a lot of material I want to get through, and then see if we have questions, because I haven't even started on what we do at the federal level. But on the very back page of your handout, this was the tips pre-Trump and pre-current. These are still valid, but they are no longer sufficient. Yeah. So I'm going to be more concise about this piece so we can move into the more novel challenges and opportunities we have about how we organize under the current climate. So yes, still contact your local officials, still call, still ask for meetings, still show up to testify, download this, figure out the lobbying and the campaign finance history, and Sue and I and any others will let you be as involved as you have any interest, any questions you ever have on getting involved at the state level. But when I had spent 12 years getting information out about the real world about how this works, all of that has assumed some checks and balances that aren't quite there in the same way anymore. And I really believe that the threat to democracy is more real now than we have ever seen, and it means that a lot of these things that have worked before that you still need to know how to do are no longer going to be enough by themselves. So as we move into the federal level, what's changed? So I want to go through and hit some, if you work backwards on the handout that you have here, you will see at the top what you can do as an advocate to prevent harm in the current federal political climate. So let me start by talking about cabinet members and people who are being appointed right now under the current administration. This is happening fast and furious. So tip 1 is to know, and I've given you the link here of where you can go to see both updates from the current president, but there is a bookmark and a link for who's being nominated and who the cabinet appointees are. Tip on cabinet appointees. On the U.S. House Senate site, the House and the Senate U.S. have different websites. On the right side of the page is going to give you a short calendar of who's coming up when on what hearing. The media is often reporting this after the fact. The difference between an activist and media reporting is we would like to have an impact before the fact. So please do consider bookmarking the U.S. Senate site. Keep an eye on the right side of that website. Feel free to share that then with your social media networks, so for other people who aren't bookmarking that, they know when and where. So, yes, you should be calling your senators, starting with your local folks, with Michael Bennet or Cory Gardner, but the US Senate now has an increased important role under one-party control because the US Senate has a few rules features that the House doesn't, and they have that unique role of confirmations. So we start with our people, but I have one point of variance from Indivisible's official guide, which is written by staff. And what they've given is very good information for staff. But an activist has a slightly different role, and so I don't think it's good enough to stop with contacting our own elected US senators. Why? They may not be on the committee with the vote on the confirmation hearing. We need to talk to the people at the US Senate committee that will have the vote to say yes or no on the confirmations, whether they are your senator or not. That does shut down their usual procedure. It is a pain from their perspective, but they are making decisions that are going to have consequences for the entire United States of America and maybe the planet, and they need to hear from us. So, so focus on who's the decision maker.